a Monday. What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We got notes on paper, which means they're real. I do find I actually really do like the note-taking on paper a lot better. Something you think you know before you're 34 years old and been doing this for 10 years. You get to draw plays. I drew up the third down. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that's what the Commanders ran on the third down where Jayden threw the ball out of bounds to Terry McLaurin. And we're going to talk about that and everything else that's in this little notebook, as well as, of course, the news of the day that Jayden Daniels has been named the starter as the Commanders steamroll towards the Patriots game and then ultimately their opener in Tampa in a little thing we like to call 1st and 10.
So that is my cue, but
my computer's not
you don't have to pull it up.
Doing the thing. Okay. So if we go to this folder and then we go to that folder and then we go to this one and a little thing we like to call 1st and 10.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3. First up, 10 observations.
Mr. Gensai and just boom, put it right on the ground.
It's 1st and 10.
Just take his guy and boom, and that's how we get started. We'll talk more in depth about these specifics of Jayden being named the starter in a little bit. Bottom of the hour, we will take your calls as well. But let's talk about how we got there with Jayden in the game as the start of our 1st and 10.
Number 1.
It is almost supernatural how easy this has looked for him so far. His ability to make quick decisions that are correct, to see through all of the coverages, to see through all those, all the disguises. And not that we're seeing a bunch of stuff because it is preseason, but he consistently is doing the right thing. And that is ultimately what a quarterback is. There's, of course, a prerequisite of physical talent and execution ability, but to make the right decisions consistently is what the position is about. And his ability to do that at an absurdly high rate in practice, which is almost more impressive, but certainly in the games, is why he was named the starter today. It's why he has consistently been ahead of Marcus Mariota, who you think would be able to do at least that part of the job, but not as well as Jayden Daniels has. And I think the question is, can he carry this forward into the regular season? Because we have seen extremely simple play calls by NFL standards, but they've run it at a tempo and with personnel that I actually think a lot of this is translatable to the regular season. Has he really had to drop back and drop back pass, read a full field yet? No, not in the preseason. He has done it plenty in training camp, but we haven't seen him do that against an opponent. And will there be situations where he's going to have to do that in the regular season? Absolutely. But I think a lot of what they're running is translatable. It's stuff that gives the quarterback pretty good information before the snap. Jayden seeing things correctly, and that way he's able to quickly get to a pretty binary decision, I think is what's happening in a lot of these plays, where Jayden is like, okay, it's this coverage. That means I'm going to have one of two options over here, and this is the player I need to figure out. He did that. That means I do this, and the ball is out like that. And not only that, he sees the game so well that I think he almost supernaturally sees some of these leverages and type of stuff where he's not having a mental calculation of like, oh, this guy's sitting on my receiver's inside shoulder. I need to throw the ball outside. It's not this like linear process. It's I see you. I'm going to throw it over there. And it just happens. And I think his ability to, like, in some ways it's hand-eye coordination, right? It's like, I see this, I do it. That reactionary nature to how he plays, the speed at which he processes things, if he's even processing at all, or whether it just comes to him that naturally, is a really, really special quality. And if he can do that when things ramp up against better competition, and it's not going to, again, be a linear thing where it just happens and he continues to get better and better over the course of his career. He's going to have weeks that are up, weeks that are down. Like, that is the nature of playing quarterback in the NFL. And I'm not trying to put too much on the kid early. Not that what I say really has any significant weight. But I think that is his ability to have done that in consecutive preseason games throughout the course of multiple drives is really special. I think the question then becomes, can you do it in the regular season? Is this offense good enough? And we also see, I think, often teams execute well in the first quarter and then hit these doldrums in the middle of games until they can figure out the right adjustments, the right plays, etc. The way this offense is structured, I'm hoping they don't have gigantic lulls because I think there are a lot of answers provided to the quarterback. And so as long as Jayden still continues to see the game well, then they shouldn't have they shouldn't have continuously extended lulls and have to make gigantic corrections. And they just got to pick the right option that's available to you. And yeah, it's impressive. It's impressive. And I get why everyone's excited. Get why people like national analysts are all of a sudden raving about him. But the question ultimately, and this is not trying to be a Debbie Downer. This is not doing anything other than stating the most obvious of reality. The question is, can they do this at this level in the regular season? And that is a giant TBD. Even that third down that I referenced, the one that I drew up here in my notebook, he reads the wrong side of the field from what Logan and I talked about this morning on Take Command. It was like a cover 2 look, and the cover 2 beater kind of was more to the right side of the formation. But he also doesn't throw into a trap. And it would have been really easy to try to throw Jahan on an out and think that, you got a clear space out there, and then that cover 2 corner sits down. And he was so decisive as that cover 2 corner, the guy that looked like he was impressed man over Terry McLaurin. Jayden was so decisive in getting that ball to Terry that the cornerback's knees buckled. He damn near made himself right. He almost, like, if he had executed the throw better, he puts that in the honey hole between the corner and the safety and gets Terry up the sideline, and it's a first down, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's an incredible play. So should he have been looking the other way and gotten the ball out to whether it was Sinnott up the seam or Diami on kind of a little sit route or just swung it to Eckler in the flat and hoped he could make a play? Yeah, I think technically that's the correct answer on that play. But when you're that decisive and you're that dedicated, like to a quick decision, and you've got good players, guys like McLaurin, you can make yourself right even in situations where you're quote unquote wrong. A couple of other offensive and JD thoughts real quick before we blitz through the rest of our 10 observations from the game against Miami.
Number 2.
Daniels getting hit. That was kind of the one hullabaloo from the game involving him, the one negative. It's fine. It's not ideal. He said he hasn't practiced the mechanics and the fundamentals of sliding, which I think then gets blown up because we see Caleb Williams and the Bears doing slip and slide, which is something that I had never seen before. Certainly other teams have practiced sliding. We've, back in the Robert Griffin III days, they brought in baseball players. They sent him to the Nationals. Like, teams have tried a million things. Jayden's going to have to learn to get down and protect himself. He can't play with the Wile E. Coyote recklessness that he played with at LSU. But in this particular case, it would have been nice if he could have squirted out of bounds. He's also, running up on the back of a blocker. He didn't get waylaid. He got chased down from behind. And ultimately, he's a football player who's going to get hit. Avoiding the big one is the key. Not throwing yourself into the big one is the key. But I'm also kind of fine with this one because he doesn't get to wear the yellow jersey in the game. And, he's going to have to learn and learning that you can get caught from behind in the NFL on a hit where you kind of get rolled over to the ground is really not that big of a deal. Even if I totally get the staff being like, bro, we're good here.
Number 3.
Last thing, just real quick on the offense. I'll talk about this more as we go throughout the week. But I love the way this offense is designed to just pull defenses side to side. It's a run to the right. It's a screen to the left. Now we pop you up the middle. So now we've covered everything, and you're just spread out. Okay, well, we got to have more bodies horizontally. Okay, well, now we're going to hit you over the top with a vertical shot. Like, the willingness and the design to hit every single part of the field, and especially the shorter parts in quick succession that just gets the defense going and going and going. that has a cumulative effect. That's exhausting to play against. It always feels like, as a defense, like you're chasing the game. I think Jayden is the perfect guy to execute this because he adds a quarterback run element that stretches you even further because you can't be as dedicated to chasing a running back because what if the quarterback pulls it? Could be a huge gain. His decisiveness that I talked about earlier in the passing game, his ability to read pre-snap looks and just be like, okay, our numbers are here. Some of this stuff looks like RPO, but it's not. It's actually kind of, it's almost a pre-snap RPO where it's like, oh, do we have numbers in the box? Okay, we have the plus numbers. Let's run the football. Oh, they've got an extra body here, which means they're short on the outside. Let's throw the bubble. So it's that version of an RPO, if you want to call that an RPO. And Jayden is really, really good at reading that and understanding it and making the quick decisions and delivering on them. And so I think this is such a great, character, or a great marriage of scheme and player. And I don't know how much impact Adam Peters had in terms of, hey, you should really look at Cliff Kingsbury because I think he'd be the perfect fit for Jayden. I don't know whether they realized how perfect this might be upon, hiring of Cliff Kingsbury, which was the first thing in this process. But man, I'm glad they did this, and I really hope that Cliff continues to show an understanding of Jayden's game at this level and that he's around for a long time to see this out because I think it could be pretty special. Of course, it's early. They haven't played a game yet. And I'm not trying to get the cart too far before the horse, but there's just stuff fundamentally I like about this that I think is translatable to the regular season. Okay, when we get back, more good stuff from Cliff Kingsbury, why I don't think there will be a definitive wide receiver 2 for the Commanders the entire season, and a couple thoughts on a couple defensive players who had really good days. Our First and 10 continues next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And coming up, we'll get deeper into Dan Quinn's decision to name Jayden Daniels the starting quarterback, which he did about 2.5 hours ago. Right now, though, let's wrap up a couple of loose ends from the game against the Dolphins. The final final 7 items for our 1st and 10.
Number 4.
Cliff Kingsbury, one other thing that I just want to mention from him is he is my favorite situational play caller that I've covered in a long time. The shots that he takes on 3rd down, I'm very team or pro arm punt. It's a lot of situations, 3rd and longs, where you get blitzes, or like 3rd and 7s, you get blitzes, you get one-on-one coverage. It's a chance to take a shot. Take your shot. And if you get picked off on a 50-yard bomb, it's a 50-yard punt, 1 down earlier, and Tressway's leg is less sore the next day. I'm fine with it. If you miss, okay, we march out Tressway. Those are really hard to get 8 yards on 3rd and 7. Take your shots. Explosives win games. I love that. But the one situation I can distinctly remember where they don't go super vertical on a 3rd down is when they're in field goal range. Let's make the field goal easier. Jayden checks it down pretty quickly. I think it was to Ben Sinnott, and they have an easier field goal attempt. Riley Patterson wound up missing it, but the process was good. So I really like that. I liked it in the red zone. They took actual shots at the end zone. I hate play calls that just get you closer and make it even harder to score, because in some ways it's easier to score from the 9 than it is from the 2. Maybe not the 2, but the 4, where running the football is really hard and there's just not a lot of space to pass it. So I like taking shots when you're in that strike zone, and Cliff has done that at a very, very high rate. Obviously, they had great success in the red zone against Miami in practice, and I think they've been pretty good against their own defense in practice as well. Speaking of the offense,
Number 5.
here's one for you. I don't think there's going to be a wide receiver 2 this year. They're going to play with Terry McLaurin and no other wide receivers. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean is, I think they see De'Ami Brown as a certain skill set. I think they see Jahan as a certain skill set. Olamide Zaccheaus is a certain skill set. Luke McCaffrey is a certain skill set. And we'll see who else winds up making the team if there is another one, whether it's a Bryson Tremaine or Martavius Bryant, that taller type of receiver, whether it is Mitchell Tinsley, whoever, Jamison Crowder. We'll see if there's someone else who winds up scratching and clawing their way onto this roster. But I think that you're going to have different guys out there, and the snaps between those 4 guys, Dotson, Brown, Zaccheaus, and McCaffrey, are going to be kind of, like, I would say more even, flatter, however you want to put it, than I would have expected a couple of months ago. And that's fine. Like, rotate them. As long as Terry's out there, your tight ends are going to be really important. I'll get back to them in a second. But I just think that there's no reason to stuff a square peg into a round hole. It's like, we need this right now, so let's go do it. And I think Jahan's clearly being kind of converted into a slot receiver. I don't know exactly what it is they like about him in there. I'm going to guess it's his twitchiness, his route running ability, giving him a two-way go, letting him use some of his ability to route people up, keeping him away maybe from some bigger corners on the outside, the chance to give him, again, more space, less press coverage in the slot. So they're trying to find out what Jahan does great and set him up. But I also think they like the speed and physicality of De'Ami on the outside. I think Zaccheaus is bigger than Dotson. I know he's small in terms of height, but he's got a little bit more thickness to him and a little bit more strength in terms of play strength. So I don't think there's going to be a definitive wide receiver too. Luke obviously brings a height element at 6'2". I think that they're going to mix all those guys up. I think they'll mix Jahan and Luke up in the slot. Like, do we want the quicker, twitchier guy in Jahan? Do we want the power slot, which has become in vogue in the league and in college, and Luke McCaffrey's that at 6'2", big, strong guy. So I think that that's something to watch, the continued usage. We'll talk about this more in the pick six a little bit later, but they're moving guys around and rotating guys at a level that I think this is just kind of how it's going to be. Plus,
Number 6.
the tight ends are going to be so important. We've seen it in camp with Zach Ertz. Sinnott and Bates have catches in this game. I think that they're going to line those guys up in the slot. I think they'll use those guys creatively in line. Cliff has a history of that, obviously, with Ertz. There's a reason Zach wanted to come here. And I think Jayden's trust of those guys is worth noting because in college, we talked about it wasn't a concern, it was a question. Can he read the middle of the field? Can he throw over the middle of the field? Because unusually high percentage of his throws were outside the numbers in college. And is that because he doesn't see the middle of the field well? Or is it because he's like, I got Neighbors and I got Thomas outside. I got NFL receivers on college DBs, and I'm no dummy. These are the best matchups. And I think that in hindsight, that was the case. We've seen him read the middle of the field. We've seen him hit Ertz a ton. We've seen him read stuff out and layer throws and do stuff that he showed flashes of on tape but wasn't as consistent with. And I think we're going to see that more during the regular season.
Number 7.
To the defensive side, Jamin Davis's progress is absolutely staggering. Pass rushing is freaking hard. Defensive end is hard. And he is showing real growth. Now, sometimes when you learn something new, getting competence early in the skill is easier than getting true mastery. You know, if you're learning how to play piano and you've never played before, like learning the most basic of scales or learning a new language, like learning simple phrases in the present tense, like you can get a couple of things down within a month. And in some levels, that's what Jamin Davis has done. But I think what happened this week is we started to see some of the specific things that he talked about take hold in this game. First and foremost, before the sack, before some of the other, I would say, more refined elements got showcased by Jamin, his explosiveness in getting off the line of scrimmage was way better than I've seen in practice and better than we saw in the first preseason game. So often in that first game and in practice, he just kind of lurches off the line right into the dead center of the offensive tackle. And you're like, dude, that is what he wants, not what you want. In this game, he was flying off the ball. And sometimes it was straight into the center of the offensive tackle. But at least once you have that power and explosiveness, if you can get there quickly, well, that becomes a bull rush. Like that's not necessarily a lack of a rush plan or a lack of understanding. That becomes at that point a choice. And he's got to continue to work. I think for as big and physical as he is, like a bull rush at his size is going to be hard because he is not 290 pounds. He's 250 pounds or whatever he's playing at this point. But I think that harnessing of his specific physical traits is something that he talked about last week, that he's gotten some tips and gotten some things and gotten some coaching, and to watch him put that into play, nevertheless starting to get some moves, kind of that crossover move on the sack fumble. I saw him later in the game from the other side get a really beautiful swipe move, 2 hands, knocks the tackle's hands out of the way and gets the corner. Ball came out, but he won that rush. You're starting to see it. And if you're starting to see it already with some work in the spring, dedicated work here in training camp, and still we're a month or 3 months if you want to count the spring stuff into this, imagine what he could be 3 months from now. I'm really excited. I love this for Jamin. I think he's a good kid who works really, really hard. And you like to see, people that are dedicated get rewarded. And Jamin Davis is absolutely being rewarded for the work that he is putting in.
Number 8.
I think Tyler Owens is going to be rewarded. I don't know exactly how this is going to go. Logan and I are going to do a roster projection on Take Command later this week. We might do one here on the show as well. I don't know what safety I'm going to have to take off to get Tyler Owens on the team, but this dude has just made too many plays. He's shown on special teams. On the big 59-yard run, he's the one who makes the touchdown-saving tackle to get back in the play, which is huge. I think that's a couple plays before the Jamin strip sack, so like it saves points. You just love to see it. And a young guy with that kind of size, with those kind of physical traits, a UDFA that they targeted and gave a nice chunk of change for UDFA. Some guys play their way onto the team, and you got to make the numbers work, and there's a lot of factors, but at this point, he deserves a roster spot, and if you're going to preach competition and not give one to him, that's not really how competition works.
Number 9.
The Benjamin St. Juste touchdown that he gave up is frustratingly familiar, but I'm also not freaking out about it. That is a ridiculous throw from Tua Tagovailoa. The arc on that to drop it in the bucket over St. Juste is spectacular. The problem is we've seen that from BSJ and from Forbes, frankly, before, where it's like, they're right there, make a play. And it took a perfect throw, and he got beat by a perfect throw. You'd like to see them probably be a little more physical early in the down, reroute. It's not to say that he played that perfectly, and there's quote-unquote nothing he could do, but he was in good phase. He did try to play through the receiver's hands. It was a great throw and a really great job by the receiver to hold on. And sometimes that happened. And I think if BSJ didn't have a litany of those, then it would be totally unconcerning. But still, as he's adjusting to the way this group coaches, I'm not going to overreact to one play in the preseason.
Number 10.
Last but not least, speaking of not overreacting to one play, I want to do a lot more on this tomorrow. But the way Dan Quinn reacted to Kaz Allen's fumble and the missed field goals from Riley Patterson tells me everything I need to know about Dan Quinn, which is he understands that just yelling, like professional football players don't need to be told when they messed up, especially on mistakes like that. Riley Patterson knows his job is to make kicks. Kaz Allen knows his job is to hold on to the football. Punishing them or lambasting them or shaming them doesn't accomplish anything but make you feel better as a coach for 14 seconds. What does make you what does accomplish something and will make you in the long term feel a lot better for a lot longer than 14 seconds is fixing the problem. And so, one, that starts with instilling confidence. And two, it goes to, all right, what went wrong? Let's identify it, not to shame you for it, but to identify it so that we can fix it, and then let's fix it. And to see DQ instill the confidence in the sidelines, the cameras catching those moments and those conversations, and then to hear him talk about it after, where he talks about, hey, let's make sure the pressure point's right on the ball for Kaz Allen so he doesn't get knocked out. Hey, Riley, was your approach right on that kick? That is spectacular. That's what coaching is. Dan Quinn is a freaking coach, and I love it, and it's why I think ultimately he will succeed here, and frankly, why he's had so much success basically everywhere he's gone. And he's got one more step to take on the resume. He's been to a Super Bowl, wants to win one, but you can't ask for much more than that in terms of how he handles players, and that ensures that he's going to get the best out of them. Okay, speaking of the guy that he's got to get the absolute most out of, Jayden Daniels is the starting quarterback for the Commanders. We'll go inside Quinn's decision to name him the starter now. And while it may not have felt it, this is what competition looks like. I'll explain next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Appreciate everyone checking us out there. The big story today is that Dan Quinn stepped to the podium in Ashburn, and that was scheduled 2 o'clock. Hey, Dan Quinn, day after game press conference, or 2 days after game in this particular case. Cool. They got a walkthrough this afternoon. And by the way, he said this.
He went through the whole thing. He didn't miss a beat, hit the targets that, we had put in front of him. We talked about the practices against the other teams, the games. So he's ready, and he's earned the right to do that. He's really put in the work while being surrounded by some excellent teammates here. And in that case, I wanted to make sure I singled one of them out. In a perfect scenario, a young QB would, have a leader to also learn from, but perfect rarely happens. But we do have that in Marcus Mariota. And him sharing 9 years of gold with Jayden, I think, has been something that's really cool for us to see. Rookie QBs usually don't get that, and we do. And when QB rooms are special, that energy can be felt throughout an entire team, and we have that. So really cool to say. So apologies for having you come up with new storylines for today, but Jayden Daniels is our starting quarterback.
And thus, we have some different storylines for the day. Thanks, Dan. Could have done this for us later in the week when it's a little bit more of a lull. Opposed to the first show we all have after game. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Dan's responsibility to program our shows. It's ours to stretch that content throughout an entire 2 weeks before we see Jayden Daniels play again. We'll actually have the debate later in the week of whether or not he should play during the rest of the regular season or the rest of the preseason. But I think that there is a little bit of misconception about this process. And I think what is happening is people are confusing the inevitable and the predetermined. And I was listening. I will at them directly, not in an effort to be confrontational, but just because I'm not trying to subtweet anyone, if you will. I was listening to Grant Danny on the way in, and they were talking about how, they could have done this in April when they drafted him. Like they could have done this in the spring. Why did this take so long? And this wasn't a competition. What are the benchmarks he had to pass? And the reality is this was a competition. But don't confuse the inevitable outcome, which is Jayden Daniels was going to beat out Marcus Mariota for reasons that became very clear very quickly, or for one reason that became very clear very quickly, with that this was predetermined and there wasn't a competition. This is different than last year. Last year, Sam Howell took every single one rep that there was from the spring through the summer, all the way until he was benched for Jacoby Brissett, and then Jacoby hurt his hamstring, and Sam went right back in there. That's not what this was. Marcus took the first 1 reps of the spring. Marcus started as the technical one. He was given ample opportunity to win the job. He didn't, because the one overriding factor that made this outcome inevitable is Jayden Daniels is the better quarterback right now. Again, don't confuse that with not having a competition. Technically, if I played LeBron James in one-on-one, there would be a competition. Now, whether you can pick the score, you can pick whatever, you can pick anything, and as long as the rules are, hey, we were playing one-on-one, it's competition. Could you give, if we're in a game to 11, could you give LeBron 10 points? Because it's like, hey, it's inevitable that you're going to win anyway. So we're just going to make this shorter for everyone. You could, but that's no longer really a competition. Actually, you can make an argument the other way that to make it a true competition, you'd have to give me 10 points to make it even remotely competitive. But the idea is that, like, it's fair, and you let the skill level determine the outcome, not any special rules, not any restrictions, not anything. This was a competition. Jayden Daniels, in said competition, beat Marcus Mariota badly. Now, do we all realistically know that Marcus isn't here to win the job? Marcus is here to be exactly the guy that Dan Quinn complimented him on in that soundbite we just played. Someone who has made Jayden even better. So Marcus helped Jayden beat Marcus in the competition because that's why he's here. It's why Brian Johnson must have gone to Adam Peters and been like, I know the guy that I want to bring into this quarterback room to mentor whoever we draft. I saw what Marcus Mariota did with Jalen Hurts last year, and I think he could be really valuable for whether it was Jayden Daniels or Drake May or J.J. McCarthy or whoever else they may have been considering with the second pick, Caleb Williams if he fell. Ultimately, it wound up being Jayden, and Marcus, for a lot of reasons, including play style, is a tremendous resource for Jayden Daniels. But he's not someone who's nearly as good of a football player. And I don't think any of us anticipated it being this definitive. I don't think, one, that Marcus would be this far behind as a player. There's, frankly, I don't have a better way to say it. Marcus was not as good as I thought he would be in practice. I knew that he would be up and down if he gets into a game. And there's part of me that thinks Marcus is probably a better game player than he is a practice player. And that's not saying he's awesome in games. It's just the out-of-structure stuff is kind of where he's been better because he's a special athlete and can run. But I don't think, on a much more important note, that we expected Jayden Daniels to be this good this quickly, to be this efficient, this fastidious, this decisive with the football, this ridiculously accurate at an NFL level, have this understanding of defenses, to put in, I think we knew he had a great work ethic, but to figure out how to harness that work ethic into productivity this quickly is special, and it is rare. And that's why he won the competition, not because it was predetermined. Because I can tell you right now, there is zero chance he's starting if they don't think he's ready. This is a group that is very much doing long-term thinking. And you can say, oh, this was decided the second they draft him second overall. That he was going to be the eventual starter? Yeah. But they want him to succeed. And if they did not think that he can succeed, no matter how bad Marcus Mariota is, frankly, or was during training camp, whatever, if they didn't think that Jayden Daniels was ready, that he didn't have the ability, the skill, the knowledge, the processing speed to go out and not only protect himself, but succeed, to stack good things, and for when the bad things happen, to have the understanding to learn from them, they wouldn't play him. Because that's how you ruin quarterbacks. But he does, and he is. And thus, he's QB1. But this is not last year. This is not, oh, Jacoby and Sam are going to compete, and then Jacoby never gets a single one rep. This was a competition. Jayden Daniels won that competition decisively. He won it decisively, frankly, weeks ago. But the thing about being process-oriented is you run out the process. And seeing him against New York and seeing him against Miami were the final stages in that process, and there is no reward. You don't get to start the season with 15 points on the scoreboard if they named him the starter 15 days ago. There was no reason to do it. And I think the way this group operates, they are relatively drama-free, and that if there was media trying to stir up stuff, why haven't they named him, then people are just going to look at you sideways as consumers, as listeners, as viewers, as readers. They'd be like, who cares? Like, yeah, we all know it's going to happen. There wasn't drama, and yet it was delayed longer than it had to be, but had to be is a relative term. Yes, it's been pretty clear for a long time. Jayden Daniels, starting quarterback, duh. But it happened because he did not only beat Marcus Mariota handily in a competition, but because he passed all the tests, and you cannot pass the tests, including the Dolphins joint practice and game, until you take them. These were the final tests. He passed them. Jayden Daniels, QB1. Your calls next on that, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Then Michael Phillips joins us to talk about it all at 5 o'clock for Not My Beat. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 301-230-0980 is the phone number if you want to get in. Talking Jayden Daniels being named the Commanders' starter. Our coverage presented by T-Mobile. Switch to T-Mobile and you can get tons of benefits and still save on every plan versus AT&T and Verizon. Use their savings calculator to find out how at T-Mobile.com/switch. Anthony, I have a question for you, sir, before we get to Michael Phillips at 5 and anybody that wants to chime in on the phones. And that question is, when I was gone, because I do feel like I'm a little maybe out of the loop on this, I didn't feel like there was a lot of pressure around this decision. I didn't feel like people were, like, in part because Mariota got hurt and because of how the weekend went, everything, like, of course it happened today. And if it hadn't, then it's like, whatever. They're just playing games. These things football teams do. But I didn't feel like there was a ton of pressure, a ton of anything around this decision. Was there a bunch of talk about, like, will he name him the starter? When will it happen? While I was gone 2 weeks ago?
Not that I can recall. And to be honest, I was still shocked that the decision was made today. And not that, this wasn't the decision to make, but it's more so. And I think it's going to, be about the conversation we have later in the week, whether or not, he should play. Personally, I don't think he should play in the final preseason game.
I agree.
But also, we have Hoffman. We also have Mariota, who are both banged up. So, I mean, are we going to see, McSorley and Driscoll the entire game? Or,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe Marcus is back.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet. Hartman, I feel like, is a bit of a longer-term situation. But I think that it just the benchmarks all along were going to be the joint practices.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised, even if they know. I mean, it kind of in some ways is like the decision to draft him. Like, Adam Peters was pretty sure in like February that Jayden Daniels was the guy that he wanted. But you just don't know what you don't know. So if you don't have to make a decision, then why wouldn't you play it out? Like, that's the thing is if you've been in jobs and relationships trying to solve problems for a long time, like, you might think you have a solution to something, or you might think that something is playing out a certain way, and then over time you get more information, and then you're like, wait a second, we need to make an adjustment here, or like, maybe this thing isn't the thing that I wanted. Your dream job, 3 months in, you realize, like, oh, once the honeymoon period is over and once they stop making things easy for me and expect me to do this part of the job that they were withholding because I was new, like, this actually sucks. Like, you don't know what you don't know over the course of time. And so I don't have a problem with them doing it. And I guess I really, like, I just think people need to be careful about, not be careful, because now I'm doing the thing, oh, you missed a banger on never read the comments last week. There was someone was like, you got to be careful of Hoffman. And I was like, boo. Because I don't know what they meant. I think they said they thought I was a flip-flopper on stuff. And I was like, no. Sometimes you get new information and your opinion changes. It's different than flip-flopping. Not that it matters. But the point is, like, I think some people are confusing winning something on the merit when you're significantly better versus just like it's predetermined. Like, if Noah Lyles and Tyreek Hill want a race, Noah Lyles is going to win. Not because it's predetermined, but because Noah Lyles is better.
Yeah.
And if your expectations are something different going in, well, that makes you a fool. If, again, like, to use an even wider gapped analogy, if I play one-on-one against LeBron James, it's going to look inevitable, almost rigged, how badly he wins one-on-one against me. But it's not actually predetermined other than our skill levels. There's a chance that if we were to play a one-on-one game, first to score wins, and I get the ball first, I catch the ball, turn around, and throw it up over my head, and somehow it goes in. Could I beat LeBron James in one-on-one? Does that possibility exist? Yes, it's not predetermined that he wins, but there's also a chance that he blocks that shot to the moon, goes and chases it down, and then dunks on me, and that's the inevitable outcome. And it's going to look predetermined because of how different the skill set is, but it's not. That's competition. It's just mismatched competition. And that's what this quarterback competition ultimately was. It was a mismatched competition where Jayden Daniels was a certainly not the gap. I'm not going to be insulting to Marcus Mariota. Marcus isn't me and Jayden's not LeBron, but it is, I guess if you want to use the clout chaser of the moment, it is Tyreek Hill versus Noah Lyles, and Jayden is Noah, and Marcus is Tyreek, and there is a significant gap. That means 10 out of 10 times here, barring injuries and unforeseen circumstances, Jayden's going to win that job. And that's the thing that I think people get confused is merit can look predetermined if there's a talent gap, but it's still merit. That is merit acting on, oh, he didn't have a chance. He did have a chance. Based off of the way the competition was set up, it didn't have a chance based off the talent discrepancy. But that's life.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
I just think also Jayden just went out there and sort of kind of just took it like he didn't really have anything for us to, be mad at him about other than, his coaches being mad at him for checking a play in the first game, or, him not getting down after running 13 yards in the second game. Like, outside of those two things, which are still teachable moments, he played flawless.
He played great. And the teachable moments are going to happen. They're going to continue to happen throughout his entire career. Like, Jayden could be a Hall of Famer by year 10 and play for 5 more years, and he'll do something in year 11 that's a teachable moment because the game is constantly evolving and changing. But I thought Kime put it really well fairly early in this process. It's like, look, this isn't Jayden versus Marcus. Like, that competition ended a long time ago. This was Jayden versus Daniels, if you will. Yeah. This was, can Jayden get to the level that they feel comfortable with him starting? If not, Marcus will carry, not because he's better, but because they don't want Jayden to stack bad reps and create any bad habits. And I think it became very apparent pretty quickly. And I think especially, like, he did have the rough day in the rain for a bunch of reasons against the Jets. That was real. That happened. People said that I wasn't there, but, like, people that were like, that wasn't the best. And if all of a sudden you're like, oh, man, is that what it's going to be like day in, day out? Well, then I don't know if we want to do that to the kid. But then he goes down and crushes Miami and throws like 5 straight touchdown passes in a red zone drill, and you're like, oh, okay. I don't know which one's Jayden, which one's Daniels in the Jayden versus Daniels thing, but clearly whichever guy is the good one won. Yeah. So I think that's worth stating as well. When we get back here on the Team 980, Mondays with Michael. Phillips joins us following the Commanders' loss to the Dolphins. Talk about Jayden, story of the day. He gets named QB1 and everything else going on in Command Land. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up 5:30, quick trip around the NFL. We obviously won't touch on every single game from the weekend, but a couple of key things, including apparently America's favorite question in 2024. What the hell are the Falcons doing? We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit, but you know what time it is. 5 o'clock on a Monday. Commanders played over the weekend. It's time for Michael Phillips in Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Of course, Michael is the host of MP on the Mic, 10 a.m. to noon on our sister station, 910 The Fan down in Richmond, which you can listen to. Where, Michael? On which app?
Free Odyssey app, Craig.
Yep, that's the one. At least the rumors, they are true. How are you, my friend? How was your weekend?
I love Parcheesi. I love card games. I love hearts. But I love What the Hell Are the Falcons Doing? That might be my favorite game.
It's a good one, and there actually are no correct answers, which is makes it such a fun game. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah,
They're sitting Penix. Like what?
We've seen enough in preseason game number 1. No reason to play our backup quarterback in preseason games 2 or 3.
Oh, okay, all righty. Which perhaps does lead to a discussion later on what the Commanders should do with Jayden Daniels in preseason game number 3. But let's start with the guy who has just been named the Commanders starter. What do you make of the timing of the decision? I mean, to ask you what you make of the decision feels ridiculously stupid. It's so obviously the correct one. But what do you make of kind of the process they used to get to what feels like an inevitable outcome, but is one that's just based off what we've seen over the last bunch of months?
Yeah, we've seen so many different ways they've handled this, right? You had the, hey, we're making him compete for it era when everybody knew who the starter was going to be. Then we're just naming the guy, even though there probably should have been a competition. We've seen it done all the different ways. I guess at the end of the day, I don't care. He's been my QB1 since he was drafted. I think everybody understands the score that, Dan Quinn wanted him to have some sort of normal process. If he thinks that's what happened, good for him. He didn't, in my mind. He just didn't say a thing that was true for several weeks, which I don't I don't get worked up about. They got the correct answer, and they didn't cost him any developmental time between here and there. So no harm was done here. But to suggest that somehow a full, fair process unfolded here, no. We had an outcome, and it just got announced today instead of a different day.
So I'm going to push back on you, Michael, because otherwise it would feel incredibly disingenuous for those that listen to the first hour of the show, because I actually disagree with what you just said there, although you actually raised a really interesting counterpoint that I hadn't fully considered, which is there actually was a fair competition, in my opinion. Why it looks unfair is Jayden Daniels is significantly better than Marcus Mariota, but they actually split 1 reps, and Marcus had the first shot at this job back in the spring. He had the 1 reps early. Had he played really well and had this been closer, then perhaps, or Jayden had played poorly, then perhaps there's a different outcome. It's just that Jayden was way better. So yes, this has been inevitable for a couple of weeks, but it's inevitable because of how the two men played. With that said, I hadn't really considered the idea of, okay, well, what if you name him the starter 2 weeks ago? Did you cost yourself development time? Jayden's mostly been with the one, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But what do you make of that retort that there actually was a competition? It just was a blowout if we're going to make it a scoreboard level game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been over since minicamp, right? All the effusive praise coming out about Jayden. It was pretty clear at that point which way they were going. I agree with you that Marcus could have forced this door open through some really great play or, something dazzling along the way. It's the NFL, right? Until you say something, it's not a done deal. So if he had been lights out, even in one of these preseason games, maybe they go back to the drawing board and say, we assumed we were going to name Jayden, but do we need to discuss this further? I think that's an astute point that in the NFL, anybody can create a competition at any time. That option was always available. He did not avail himself of it because, as you mentioned, he's not as good as number 5. Number 5's the best quarterback on the roster. I mean, if you want to really quibble about developmental time, I'll point out there's been a lot of snaps available. He hasn't been given. I don't think it's a huge deal. I do get the sense he's doing all the right things, getting all the right classroom work, doing all the right reps. I think he's as prepared as a rookie can be for what happens next. And I think, hey, I've been critical of Cliff Kingsbury, so I want to give a hat tip to Cliff Kingsbury, who has put him in a lot of different situations in these 2 preseason weeks, way more, I would say, than the average quarterback, or at least the average preseason game I've watched in my time in Ashburn. I think he's done a very nice job getting him ready.
Michael Phillips, MP on the mic, 910 The Fan, down in Richmond with us here on the Hoffman Show. I agree with that. The competition, the scoreboard said it's over since minicamp, but there was still time on the clock, and thus you never know with such things. Let's expand on the Cliff point, because I've also been very, very impressed with Cliff. Seeing what they've done with him, I'll let you take first crack at this. I don't know that we'll get to this topic on the show, frankly, until Wednesday, but what do you want to see from Jayden moving forward? And that could include nothing until he starts week 1 against Tampa.
I don't know that he needs to come out Sunday night for the preseason game. If they want him to do a series or 2, I have no problems with that. Certainly still offensive line things to clean up, and those are best cleaned up with the starting quarterback, with the guy whose cadence you're going to hear, with the guy you're going to be with in the huddle, with the guy who's calling the protection. So I have no problems if they want to play him 1 or 2 series on Sunday night. I don't need to see it from James' perspective, but I think there are compelling reasons, right, to do it, for cleaning up the offensive line, for giving him snaps at FedEx Field, whatever that's worth. I don't know that that's worth an immense amount, but he's never played a game at FedEx Field, and this will be his only opportunity.
And by the way, Michael, he never will, because it's Commanders Field now.
Thank you. How about that?
I mean,
yeah, that's.
He could take the first ever snaps at Commanders Field. That alone seems like a terrible reason to expose your starting quarterback to a potential injury.
A ceremonial first snap there.
Yeah.
Now I got 2 old names I got to worry about accidentally saying. Unbelievable. They just continue stacking up. I think that, from Cliff's perspective, right, I think he wanted to see all the formations, all the things. I think at one point, it was really hard to tell from the TV copy, I think at one point they ran a no huddle out of an incomplete pass, right? That tells me Cliff had a laundry list of things he wanted to get done, and he was going to get those things done.
Yeah, for sure. And also, Michael, if you ever are just like, I can't remember what, just think, what would Doug Williams say?
We are the Commander.
That is correct. And I had the soundbite ready to go, and now I get hotkey error, internal error while processing the operation. Try again. Come on.
We are the Commanders.
There we go. And don't forget, you have to laugh after.
The downgrade there. The downgrade there from the actual clip to me doing an impression of the clip. That I'm glad we got the redemption.
Yeah. And yes, I do really have the Craig Melvin on my soundboard. Michael Phillips, MP on the mic. He does a great show. He doesn't have that feature, but he's with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right, let's stick with the offense. I know you wanted to talk about the receivers. I made the bold declaration earlier, Michael, that I don't think there's going to be a wide receiver 2 on this team. That you're just going to see a rotation of a bunch of different dudes who have differing skill sets, and they're going to try to put them in spots where they can succeed. That's kind of my impression of the last couple of weeks of how this thing has played out. Where are you at with the wide receiver room, specifically beyond Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I was intrigued by Jahan playing almost exclusively in the slot, right? So you got, Terry on his side. You've got, what would the position formerly known as number 2 wide receiver before you killed it. You've got Dyami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus. Those are the 2 guys that lined up outside. I could see that continuing into the season. I don't know that was some kind of preseason bluff or experiment. And then in the slot, you've got Jahan Dotson and Luke McCaffrey, right? And so everybody's got their role. The thing I'm trying to figure out, I continue to think that when it's showtime, they're going to have a lot of 2 tight end sets, which kind of scrambles everything up to start with anyway, because I think the tight ends, there's a lot of guys making very legitimate cases to get some snaps, get some playing time out there. But I'm ready to simplify this to Dyami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus are competing for snaps, and Jahan Dotson and Luke McCaffrey are competing for snaps. And that's an oversimplification, but it felt like that was where we were trending on Saturday.
No, I think that's an astute observation because, and I do think that those snaps are ultimately one guy's going to line up in the slot. But I think some weeks it's just going to be Luke based more on they want a big power slot. And then some weeks it's like, no, we think Jahan's the better matchup. I'm still curious what the distribution is going to be on the outside because Zaccheaus and Brown bring some different stuff to that spot, different size. And, obviously there could be a wide receiver 6 that's in play here. And if it's Bryant or Tremaine, who seems to be falling out of favor for reasons I don't fully understand, but if it's one of those bigger body types, like you would think they would have a role. But I also agree that the way Sinnott has played, the way Ertz has been, you're going to see a lot of different formation stuff. You're going to see a lot of different packages, and I think that's going to be fun to watch Cliff manage that. The thing is, though, you got to get it right week in, week out. It's a lot of moving parts as opposed to just kind of being the classic, here's who we are, line up and beat us type of team.
A lot of moving parts. I haven't talked about Jayden Daniels in 4 minutes, so this is a great excuse to say Jayden Daniels' name again. One of the things that's impressed me this preseason, he processes at a very high level, right? They went through a lot of different looks, a lot of different the no-huddle stuff to come into the line in each of the 2 weeks, and he handled it all very well. And one of the things you've heard from the building, right, is you can throw pretty much anything at this kid, and, with practice, with preparation, he's going to be ready for it. I think that bodes really well for the situation you just described, that you've got a quarterback that is not going to be bothered by being in a roster that ends up looking like that.
Michael Phillips, MP on the mic, down in Richmond with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, long time beat reporter, columnist, covered the team from all different angles. And by all different angles, I just mean he wrote and then he did the radio. Because Michael, television doesn't exist. That's all
threat,
angles.
Baby.
Yeah, radio, and writing. That's all you need to do in life. Defensively, it's hard to take, to me, a whole lot out of the early snaps because you don't have almost anybody in the front 7 besides Dorrance Armstrong, who, by the way, I think he's going to be really good. He full on just got lost, more lost than, I don't know, whoever the most lost person you can think of is on that tight end reverse, just full didn't see the ball get pitched coming around. So that That was a fun play. But besides him and Frankie Louvu, you didn't have any of the front seven out there. But the secondary was out there. A couple of plays made. Quan Martin has a nice play deep. Obviously, the touchdown given up by St. Juice. What do you take out of the guys that we anticipate seeing a lot of during the regular season before we get to the guys that we're wondering if they will, or if we will, a la Jamin Davis?
Yeah, I think we talk about this defense as being better than last year, and the coaching's better. And, if they're 60 to 70% better, that's awesome. I think there's still a real liability on explosive plays. And if you were tired of hearing that phrase last year, I get the sense we may be hearing that phrase again this year. I get the sense they're not shored up enough that they can play some kind, the way teams play against Mahomes, right, where they just drop two safeties back, say you're going to win this 8 yards at a time, and maybe we'll get lucky and you get a holding penalty, and that's our strategy for beating you, right? I think teams are going to go for the jugular against these guys, and I don't know that I've seen enough yet to say that they're ready for that or that they're good enough or talented enough to prevent that. That is probably what's scaring me the most right now. I'm not actually losing sleep, but if I were, it would probably be over the threat of big explosive plays undoing what has otherwise been a step forward for this group.
Who do you think winds up being the starting corners on this team? Are you still like Forbes, St. Juice running it back? Do you think Davis? Do you think that they do something wacky and Sanders still is outside? Like, where are you at with one preseason game to go with that crew?
Yeah, I think Sanders still's your third, right? So I think it's St. Juice, and I'm curious, right? I think they want it to be Forbes because Davis is known, right? He's a veteran guy. We all fall in love with veteran guys this time of year. He is what he is. We got enough NFL tape on him to know what he is. Forbes, the ceiling is higher. The floor is a lot lower, Craig. And so I think that's what they're going to have to balance is if this is a rebuilding trust effort, you can't expose him to getting burned by Daniel Jones and, by Joe Burrow and in these first weeks, even Baker Mayfield, who's got a ton of receiving weapons. You run the risk of undoing all the work you've spent all offseason doing. And that doesn't speak great of where the work got you, but man, I think you look at, I think St. Juice will be fine. I really do. And I know he didn't look great on that touchdown, but I feel comfortable with him being an NFL caliber starting corner. He's probably not a CB1. That's where you have to play him here. That's what he is on this team. I don't love that he's there, but I think he's an NFL caliber starting corner. I think Davis is a replacement level guy, and you've got to figure out, is Forbes better or worse than that?
Yeah, I actually think Forbes has shown relatively well, especially the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
he also finally looks bigger.
90% of the time. 90% of the time. He works every time, Craig. It's the 10%.
It's less than 10%, and it's specific stuff. I have faith, Mike. I really do. And I will say, he finally does actually look bigger. Like, even on television, you're like, oh, okay. I see those 17 pounds you put on. What did you make, speaking of him on television, what did you make of his comments? We haven't talked about this yet, but the under the microscope thing. I'm going to ask you open-ended, and then I will give my take on it since I haven't talked about it yet.
Well, he's indisputably right. He is, and that is true. And we talk about him more because he's a first-round pick than we do if he wasn't. And if St. Juice were a first-round pick, we'd probably be picking him apart like that too. And we'd probably have several segments today devoted to the touchdown he gave up. But he's not. And the fundamental point is correct. It's life is unfair in the NFL. If you're a first-round draft pick, you face immensely more scrutiny. That said, I'm not breaking out the tiny violin for him, right? He was a ball hawking SEC, 6'6" guy, and it just disappeared when he got to the NFL. And I think the last coaching staff did him a lot of disservice, but I think it's a very fair and interesting storyline. What is this kid? Can he reclaim it? And because of that, there's going to be a lot of eyes on him. And I think that's why it's such an interesting decision for this staff, who has unquestionably gotten more out of him. You mentioned the body type, which is better. You mentioned the play, which is better. Is it worth risking all that for the potential that he has one of those games that he had with A.J. Brown and everything goes back to zero and everybody's, oh, well, tough. I guess that just doesn't work. I think that's the microscope, right? And that's the coaching staff's decision. Is it worth it or not worth it to potentially expose him to that when the upside is, I do think he's better than Davis?
Yeah, I actually think the coaching staff has done a tremendous job in general, like being like, don't worry about outside. You worry about what we think, and what we think is X, and players know where they stand. I also don't think that Forbes was like, that quote came out and I think it looks worse in print than it is if you watch that interview, where he's like, yeah, you feel like you're under the microscope, but like that's the NFL, that's football. Like I don't think it was said as a complaint. I think it was merely a statement of fact. And as you said, like it's a statement of fact that is correct. But I also think that the ability to brush that off and just be like, okay, this is what it is for everybody. I'm not special. I don't think he was saying that he is special in any way or is being treated even unfairly. It's just the reality that you have to live with. And I think he is. I've always actually been impressed with him in interviews, Michael, but I do feel like this staff has got him more prepared to deal with the reality of being under that microscope, a.k.a. being a better player. And as long as he's feeling that progress and they're seeing that progress, then it's worth the risk. And if he can't handle a bad game as a corner, you're not going to survive in this league anyway, because sometimes you go up against, A.J. Brown, and them's the breaks in the league.
You think this coaching staff is better than the previous defensive coaching staff?
I know. I should stop being a hot take artist. I should just. What a shameful person I am. Speaking of first-round picks of the last staff, Michael, real quick before we get out of here, I've been impressed with Jayden Davis the last couple weeks as well. What did you see from Jayden besides the obvious of, hey, he forced a fumble, and that's good?
My hot take on my show is I think he's actually becoming like maybe a little bit of a fan favorite. Like I think people like the Jayden Davis redemption story arc. Kids working hard. They're trying to find a space for him. He's aggressive. You still don't know what to do with him. You still don't know what situations to put him in, because I think he is a liability in certain situations, and your smarter quarterbacks are going to take advantage of that. But I get the sense people are rooting for him, Craig, and I like that. That warms my heart a little bit, that it's not just Jayden Davis bust, but now new team, new coach, new slate, fresh slate, and yeah, I think people are rooting for him a little bit.
No, I agree. And by the way, you can count me in on that. To the extent that we root in when we're journalists, I'm rooting for Jayden Davis, because I root for people that play really hard and hustle and try and are willing to take risks and bet on themselves, and that's what he's doing. I guess he could have been obstinate and been like, I'm not playing defensive end. You put me at linebacker, and if I don't make the team, you cut me. But he didn't. He's like, okay, you want me to do this? And he's doing it. And he might actually turn out to be good at it. That would be cool.
None of any of this is Jayden Davis's fault. That helps too, right? Like he didn't draft him to be a middle linebacker when, there were, all those stories were like, hey, he's played like 7 college games. What is he? So I think everybody's willing to give him a chance, and I agree. I hope he turns into something good. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yep. No, agreed. Anything in particular that you want to highlight for folks either on your show today or to watch for this week if they want to check out the old Odyssey app between 10 a.m. and noon?
We want to bring everybody if you're in the Richmond area this weekend, we're doing a football festival. River City Roll is the bowling alley in the middle of town, but it's also like a bar and, big event space. We're doing a big football festival, 3 to 7, Saturday night, River City Roll in Richmond. If you're near the Richmond area, it's going to be a ton of fun, so come hang out with us.
I mean, I'm always looking for an excuse to come to Richmond, Michael. Why wasn't I personally invited?
You are personally invited
to
come hang out with me. Your first beverage is on me, as long as it's not one of those highfalutin IPAs that cost a lot of money.
No, I'm not
a simple man.
I'm not an IPA kind of guy. I will also say that the chances that I can convince my wife to make a trip this weekend, as we're still we just got back from France. We don't want to leave the house yet. Probably not great, but I still would have liked a personal invitation. And now I got one. So, whether I turn it down or not, TBD, but I'll let you know.
I will be, and then I will be up 95 the next day. I will be filling in for our guy, Steve Wino, writing the Associated Press report from the preseason game, which I should have read the fine print, and this is on me, does apparently mean I have to stay until the finish.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a choice you've made, Michael. But it means you'll have seen the whole thing. And when we play the Not My Beat Imager next Monday, and it's from someone who's there, you'll have been there.
Me and 12 of my closest friends.
And that's about it. Hey, it's Jayden Daniels versus Drake May. What dreams are made of, except for the part where Jayden's, probably not going to play. Michael Phillips, everybody. 910 The Fan in Richmond, which you can find on the free Odyssey app and listen to Michael's show from 10 a.m. to noon, or just wait for him to show up weekly at 5 p.m. on Mondays right here. Michael, thank you, sir.
It is my pleasure.
That is Michael Phillips. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we will go around the NFL and ask America's favorite question in 2024. What the hell are the Falcons doing? They get real Icarus-y, to go back to your Greek mythology days. You remember the story of Icarus, Anthony?
Not quite, Frank.
What do they teach you at Georgetown Prep? Icarus, the guy who flies too close to the sun. What do they teach you? Anthony, I think you just put your job at risk at Georgetown Prep.
Why?
There's no way that they did not teach you the story of Icarus at Georgetown Prep.
We actually did a lot of Greek mythology, but we didn't talk about Icarus flying too close to the sun.
Yes, you did. You don't remember it. I feel very confident. Who can we call at Prep to confirm this?
I will just do that right now, actually.
Okay. I would like you to ask someone of authority. Do we teach about Icarus?
2 hours later.
Did we ever check in on that, Anthony?
Yeah, my classmate texted me and said, yeah, we've done it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to figure out where you were on that day of class at a later date.
You're right.
Anna Sabalenka makes the U.S. Open final, the Belarusian player, and here's how it sounded on Belarusian television.
Арина Соболенко! Во-во-во-во-во-во-во! Что Арина недостойна звания первой ракетки мира.
Yeah.
Получите! Распишитесь!
Oh, yeah.
Rising up, back on the street. Did my time, took my chances. When the deck on my feet, just a man and his will to survive. So many times it happens too fast.
Oh, he's
You change your passion for glory. It's the eye of the tiger. It's the thrill of the night. Rising up to the challenge of a rival. And they lost, no survivor. Chose to Все, ребята, я сдулся.
10 out of 10. No notes. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up 6 o'clock, our pick 6. On Friday, Toby was in for Ant, and we picked 6 players we were looking forward to watching in the game, and we'll check in on how those 6 did. Coming up at 6 o'clock. That's how we do it during the regular season as well. More from Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels as we go as well on the day that Dan Quinn names Jayden the starting quarterback for the Commanders for the regular season. But let's take a look at some of the rest of what happened around the league. Anthony, it's 5:30, so we go around the NFL. A reminder, during the regular season, 5:30 on Fridays, we go through each and every game. We pick all of them. On Monday, we see how we did, and we review every game. So your one-stop shop, 5:30 Fridays, Mondays for your NFL weekend. A preview and a review, and if that doesn't work for your schedule, we have a podcast. Just search The Hoffman Show wherever you get your pods, and you can have that. Maybe you don't get a chance to normally listen on Fridays, but you're driving around running errands on Sunday morning before the games start, and you want all the analysis and the picks, then that's a perfect time to dip back into the Friday pod and check out the previews. Okay, Anthony, we're not going to necessarily hit every game because it's the preseason, and actually what Toby and I did on Friday was we went through every single game and said whether we were interested in watching it or not. We did not do previews. We didn't, and games that we said no, we just kept moving. So we can talk about anything that's interesting that pops up, but we can also go pass, I'm good if there's nothing from any particular game. Let's start with what is truly, though, one of the most confounding things that I can remember seeing in recent quarterback development memory. The continued saga of Michael Penix, the Falcons, Kirk Cousins, and none of it making any sense at all. The Falcons lose to the Ravens 13-12. That's fine. That's whatever. And in this game, neither Penix or Cousins plays. Obviously, Cousins is still coming off the injury, but I believe he played in their Week 1 game. But Penix definitely did, and he looked really, really good. And so the Falcons said, we're good. We've seen enough. We don't need to see Michael Penix anymore. But here's the thing, Anthony. By their own admission, if Penix, or if things go like they want, Penix isn't going to play for at least 2 years. These are the only live reps he's going to get. Why are you not throwing him out there? Why are you not getting him more experience? And if he's this good, again, if you thought this was possible, why the hell did you spend that much money on Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles? This is just such an indefensible position. Either he's your backup and you're developing him, and those reps are super duper valuable, so that when he eventually does play in a couple of years, when he's a lot older than a quarterback typically is 2 years in, which was part of the flabbergastedness of the larger NFL community in drafting him, then you need to get him those reps. And if he's not, because he's your starter, well, then we have questions about what you did with Cousins and why that was a thing. You got to do one or the other. Who rests their backup because you've seen enough? The whole point is to let him develop so that he's as good as he possibly can be one day, because you don't need him immediately. It is bizarre, Anthony. Bizarre.
Yeah, I don't quite understand it either. We know what Taylor Heineke is. For him to start the game, go out there, and, do what he usually does. What did you necessarily learn? I think you got to use these preseason games.
Don't you know what Taylor Heineke is? Why does Taylor Heineke need the snaps?
Exactly. I just think, these preseason games, you should be using these games to, find something out about your players. Michael Penix isn't, just a final proven product. If he was, you wouldn't have, gone out there and, spend so much money on Kirk Cousins just so soon.
We didn't know if he was going to be available to us at the draft. Bro, no one else was drafting him in the top 10.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Just mind-blowing.
Maybe they didn't want to play him because they didn't necessarily have their starting receivers and,
unless they think, Cousins isn't going to be ready, but isn't Cousins taking all the 1 reps? Cousins is ready.
Your guess is best as mine. You think we'll see him in the third one?
No, they've already said that he's not going to.
Oh, never mind.
So unless you're like, oh, crap, Cousins isn't going to be ready, which Cousins, I beg your pardon, earlier, correcting myself, Cousins didn't play in the first one. Penix went 9 of 16, no touchdowns, he averaged 6.5 yards of completion. Like 9 of 16 for 104 is solid, but it's not like he set the world on fire.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. Falcons continue to live on their own planet. Guy that's on his own planet for good reasons. Caleb Williams. Woo, buddy. Them some highlights. Bengals and Bears. Bears now 3-0 in the preseason. They won the Hall of Fame game. They've won their previous year. They've actually blown out other teams, which I guess speaks well to their depth more so than anything else. It is the preseason. You know, if their fours beat up on someone else's fours, and they had threes, they had a really good third quarter in this one. But yeah, Caleb Williams, scrambling, doing crazy Caleb Williams stuff. But the thing I like about the crazy highlight play that I believe it ends in a touchdown to Rome Odunze is he's controlled as he scrambles like a madman. Like, you can see him looking around. He's aware of his surroundings. He's buying time with a purpose. It's not just like running around praying that something good happens. It's on some level controlled chaos. And that's really, really cool to watch for a young guy to do that already. You see some other just really supernatural type of stuff, just crazy zip on throws. Yeah, Caleb Williams is as advertised. There's a chance that by the end of this year, Anthony, we already consider him the best quarterback in Bears history. That speaks more to the quarterbacks in Bears history, but yeah, they've never had a quarterback throw for 4K. He could do it this year. He's that good.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if I want to compare him to a young Russell Wilson, or Patrick Mahomes. We know he gets the Patrick comparisons just because of the arm angles in which he throws the ball. But I'm not gonna lie, the way he escapes and extends the play, I sort of kind of do get a little Russ as well. Just a little bit.
I get it. I mean, my comparison for him has always been kind of a better version of Kyler.
Okay.
Because I think comparing anyone to Mahomes is ludicrous. Like, Pat is so in control. Now, Caleb might wind up being really, really good. It might be one of the guys that challenges Pat for the next decade. So who knows? Maybe it's not ludicrous. But I think Kyler has a lot of the escapability, the running threat, like a lot of that stuff. Maybe Kyler is, or definitely Kyler, I think, at his peak is a better runner than Caleb. But some of that, like, I'm going to run around. You can't catch me. I'm going to now throw the ball crazy. It's great zip on his, like, velocity on his throws. Russ has always been an interesting one for a lot of reasons, but he also is a guy that sometimes really struggles to read it from the pocket. I think Caleb can dice you from the pocket, and especially will ultimately years from now when he's got way more, reps in the bank and thus has seen a bunch of different looks and the whole deal. I think he's going to be able to just crush people from the pocket and then have the escapability, which is kind of the Mahomes theory of the case. But yeah, he's some combination of all those dudes, and we'll see how good he ultimately gets. But I get the Russ thing too. Russ's ability to escape and then make big plays down the field, that was a really, really special attribute that he had, and we'll see if he still has it. Daniel Jones, yikes, bro. First game back since the ACL. He goes 11 of 18, but 2 picks. I did not watch this one, Anthony, but the stats, obviously, you don't want to get picked off twice in your return from ACL. I guess it's better if it's in the preseason than the regular season, but I'm sure Giants fans are not feeling particularly psyched right now.
Yeah, the SpongeBob episode where they're all sitting in, I forgot where they are, and somebody just yelled from the crowd, "Oh, brother, this guy stinks." That's all I can think about when I see Daniel Jones, except when he plays the Commanders. That's it.
Yeah. I just also imagine, to SpongeBob it up, there's the clip of Joe Shane, I beg your pardon, in Hard Knocks, where he's like, we kind of got to figure out if this guy, like, we pay this guy money, and if he can do it, then there's a reason we paid him the money. If he can't, like, we need to know. And I kind of just anticipate that. Then the SpongeBob, 1 year later. The Giants announced they've released Daniel Jones today. Just waiting for that supercut to happen on TikTok next year. Lions and Chiefs. The main story from this one is not that the Chiefs won, that the Lions won on a last-second, type of deal. It's not that we got to see Hendon Hooker for the Lions. Nate Sudfeld, preseason balling, throws for 14. He threw 27 times in a preseason game. It's not that Chris Aladokin had a perfect 158.3 quarterback rating for the Chiefs. It's none of those. It's that Patty Mahomes threw an around-the-back pass to Travis Kelce because he was pissed off at Travis Kelce. That is the lead story of this game.
Long story short, Travis didn't run the route he was supposed to run, and then it was kind of a behind-the-back pass, kind of because I was mad. He was supposed to run a flat route. I don't know if you can hear me on the broadcast. I'm yelling at him, and then he doesn't run it. So out of spite, I do a behind-the-back pass, but now it's going to be a highlight.
Oh, that's awesome because you just improvised it. Is that what you're telling us? It's just all improv?
100%. That's what I've been trying to say it to everybody. It can't be planned.
He does it in practice all the time, but it's got to be natural. You just feel it out, and lo and behold, he did it, Anthony.
It's actually ridiculous, man. Like the stuff he pulls off, the behinds the back, the no looks. Like that's stuff you do in basketball. You're bringing this on the football field for leisure while somebody's running after you. Oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
He's a wizard.
He's a wizard. You'll hear Kelsey's take on the whole situation in Real Things Real People Said in Real Microphones. Vikings 27, Browns 12. Sam Howell, nice little bounce back game, throws for $153 and a touchdown. Did take 2 sacks, but nice bounce back day for Howell as the Seahawks fall to the Titans 16-15. Bills 9, Steelers 3. Yuck. Justin Fields 92 yards passing, no touchdowns, no picks. Jets 15, Panthers 12, Rams 13, Chargers 9. The big winner there, by the way, Anthony, our pal Noah Eagle, his airline miles. Bro, Noah went to Paris to call the Olympics. He's back. He's doing Chargers preseason. So go Paris I think he lives in New York. Noah does live in New York. So Paris, New York, LA for Chargers, and then in a couple of weeks he's headed to Brazil to call the preseason game for NBC. The regular season opener, the Eagles Packers game in Brazil for NBC.
Oh my gosh.
He's gonna get like airline or status by those 3 flights alone.
He's on a world tour.
Yeah, literally. Bucks, Jags, Mac Jones, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pop quiz, Anthony. Does he play for the Bucks or the Jags?
Played for the Jags.
That is correct. 20-7, they won. Cowboys 27, Raiders 12. Trey Lance 151 yards and a touchdown. Also had 7 carries for 34 yards and a rushing touchdown. Bo Nix, he looks legit, bro. 27-2. The Broncos beat the Packers 27-2. Gotta love 27-2 preseason game. And the Niners 16-10. They beat the Saints with Josh Dobbs leading the way at quarterback. All right, that is a quick trip around the NFL. Typically, we spend a little bit more time on that, but it's the preseason, and we don't feel the need. When we get back the rest of the weekend in the world of sports, and then 6 o'clock, our pick 6, some of the key players from the Commanders' preseason loss to the Dolphins. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Back to what Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels had to say today, coming up in the final hour of the show. But Anthony, just real quick, you do anything fun this weekend? You do anything different this weekend? You were on college visits for part of it. What, you all right over there, by the way? There's like a lot of commotion there.
Oh, it's my light probably.
Oh.
Yeah, so Thursday and Friday, a couple of college visits. My brother and sister had a farewell dinner on Saturday. And we did this TikTok. Have you seen are you familiar with the TikTok where they say, "Give me my money"?
Yes, I am. I got familiarized because the U.S. women's national team, soccer team, did that in the Olympics, and they did it to Crystal Dunn, which was so unfair. Take the mom of the group who's not on TikTok, who's just hanging out with her 20-something-year-old friends on her soccer team that just so happens to be on the way to winning Olympic gold, and it's filled with literal children, some of them, and they did. So if you're not familiar with the trend, Anthony, continue to tell the story. And if I have to do any explaining, I will.
Okay. So the initial plan when we did this TikTok was to get my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to get my dad, but my dad was like, he already knows the TikTok. He saw it on YouTube. I knew my dad didn't have TikTok. So I was very surprised that he said he saw it on YouTube.
Good job, Big Tony.
So then.
So hold on. Was he just like, I'm not doing this?
No. So the way you get got is you have no idea that everybody's not. Yeah. So he already knew that we weren't going to clap for him. He was like, I already knew. So we couldn't get him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So then my brother, who has a son, my nephew, he threw out the idea, let's get Aston, our 3-year-old nephew. And when I tell you, it was hilarious.
So basically, the way this works is everybody in the group is in on it except for one person.
Yes.
But everyone looks kind of like, no, you don't know who's not in, or you're just like all doing the same thing. It's like, oh, it's your turn. It's your turn.
Yep.
And you say, what is it?
Just give me my money.
Yeah, just give me my money.
Yeah.
And then the next person goes, and it's kind of a random order until the person who's not in on it eventually goes. And every time you go, just give me my money, everyone claps. Goes, yay! and then one person does it, and then nobody claps.
Yeah, nobody.
And then they're
claps.
all just like, what? And y'all did that to a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
You realize you could emotionally scar that child for life.
No, he has tough skin. He actually started. So he was sad at first, but then when everybody started laughing, he started laughing as well. So
that's really fun.
It was hilarious. So yeah, that was the dinner, and then yesterday I caught up with a couple of friends at brunch.
Nice.
Well, I guess lunch because we didn't really drink or like do any mimosas or anything. But
there was no breakfast items.
I got French toast.
Then it was brunch.
Yeah,
brunch isn't alcohol based. Was there a breakfast element? Now sometimes it's orange juice in the mimosas.
Yeah,
but
I told a couple of people I went to brunch. It was like, oh, really? You must have got it. I was like, nah, it wasn't that kind of brunch. It was more so just.
I think that is a DC thing, though. Like DC is a big brunch. Like everyone gets hammered and it's 4 p.m. town.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just not my style. Unless I grew up with brunch just being, hey, we had breakfast really late.
That's essentially what it was. But yeah, DC, we're known for our brunches and things of that nature. So
it was pretty funny. There was a spot in Paris that was like American style brunch, and I was like, it means you have mimosas. It means people come here and they get tanked.
Yeah,
that's what that means. We went to Audi Field yesterday for the friendly between the Spirit and Arsenal, which is a really cool atmosphere. 15,000. A lot of Arsenal fans, a lot of Spirit. I think a lot of people are just excited to be there that kind of like both teams because, one's an English team and one's here. But the sun, man, was brutal. Dear scheduling gods, we can't be doing 2:00 games in August in DC. That was terrible. Also, Rachel and I both have some nasty tan lines from that game.
Oh, man.
And what's funny is, it's just my left arm. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, actually, I see it. Yeah. I see it all the way from here.
Yeah. But on this arm,
Oh, you're good.
I'm fine.
You must have been standing like this.
Well, the sun was coming down from my left.
Oh, okay.
Rachel has a nice tan line on her legs.
Ah.
She was wearing like biker shorts,
Mm-hmm.
and she's just like, oh. She's like, it's been a while since I've had soccer girl problems. But yeah,
tough.
it was a fun match. I gotta say, Ule Sar, who scored the goal, the Spirit lost 2-1. They don't have their four Team USA members back yet. Like, it's a friendly.
Yeah.
Arsenal for the first half played pretty much their A team, and it was 1-1 at the half. It was really funny because that one goal was from Ule Sar, who missed 2 shots from point blank range back to back, and then the ball like barrages out. They feed the ball back in, and she hits in this impossible header.
Wow.
Over like the outstretched arms of the goalkeeper. And you're just like, you missed those 2? It'd be like if Steph Curry missed 2 layups and then hit like a logo 3 twisting around backwards. And you're just like, what happened to the layups? It actually feels more like a J.R. Smith type of thing.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what? Why did? So it was a fun day.
I guess she was due for one.
Yeah, she was. She had a couple more opportunities in that game too. Spirit should have probably won that one about 4-2, but that's okay. These things happen. Next weekend should be really, really fun. Or this weekend, you got a doubleheader. Unfortunately, the Spirit game is at 2 again. When I have to submit a complaint to the league office. Be like, yo, can you move this game to not 2 in the afternoon? But you got Spirit, who are currently 3rd in the NWSL table as the season resumes, taking on Kansas City, who's 1st. So that game's going to be a banger. And then Arsenal and Chelsea are playing a friendly right after. One ticket, 2 games.
That's
so
tough.
that'll be a fun weekend. But we'll talk more about all the weekend's non-football happenings coming up tomorrow. We do our weekend in review. We move it to Tuesdays during football season, kind of get to everything that we couldn't get to because we're basically football focused on a Monday. Preseason, we're ramping up. We're not in we couldn't do the full show on football. Just like, you can't have your starters playing a full game in the preseason. But that was the one segment where we're not going to talk about football. We're back to football next. Our pick 6, Toby Altizer was in for Anthony on Friday. Toby and I alternated 3 apiece, 6 total players we were most intrigued to watch. We will run through how they did next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And yeah, we are streaming live on YouTube all 3 hours as well at the Team 980. Right now, we'll do our pick 6 coming up at 6:30. You'll hear from Jayden Daniels and Dan Quinn after Quinn named Daniels the starting quarterback today. Tomorrow, we will take your calls on that because, Anthony, I don't know if you saw what I put in the rundown for tomorrow.
I think, did you text me it?
No, I did not. I put it in the Google sheet.
Nope, I have not seen it then.
We're getting closer to football season. It's Tuesday.
Yep.
I think it's time. It's Vibe Check Tuesday time.
Yes, sir. Let's get it.
We're going to bring the Vibe Check Tuesday back. So we'll take your calls in the 4 o'clock hour tomorrow, 301-230-0980. Put it in your phone now. Call us tomorrow. Let us know your thoughts on Jayden being named the starter. Right now, though, time for our pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, the way we do this during the regular season, and this was kind of our tune-up for that, we'll do it again this week as well, is we highlight 6 players that in the regular season we think are the most important for the Commanders. For victory, we basically take the quarterback off of the table because that is too obvious. Although for the preseason, we modified it slightly. Which players are we most intrigued to watch? Because the wins, the losses, they don't matter as much. And there was a pretty obvious number 1 by the end of last week.
Number 1
was Jahan Dotson. Toby had the honor of picking him on Friday. And Jahan had an interesting day, I would say, Anthony. Lined up predominantly in the slot. Looks like that's what's happening with him. They're trying to move him to that position. I think, obviously, there's other wide receivers that were more interesting or were more productive. I think Jahan, the thing that I wrote down about Jahan, the only time I wrote his number down was on the screen pass that he caught. I like to see more urgency in getting upfield, and that's kind of the thing with him. Is like you just want to see stuff happen a little bit faster. Not that he's bad, not that he's unproductive, not that he's not promising, not that he can't eventually work out and he can't be a really good player for this team. But it looks like he's going to be a slot guy. They're still trying to figure out how to use him. No matter how they use him, he's got to play a little bit faster to really thrive at the NFL level.
Yeah, a little bit of a mixed day for Jahan, but I guess I was excited to see that, he didn't play as much. I think him playing so much in the first preseason game just brought so many concerns about, where he is. And maybe he is just a slot receiver. We didn't see him line up too much on the outside. But I think he should, just be able to, embrace it and go from there. I think he's going to be able to thrive a little bit more because he is small and he's not as physical. And we've seen some really talented, slot receivers. So I think he should just, embrace it with a grain of salt.
Of course. I mean, his quickness should work on some level, but you do have to play with physicality in the slot. Like, guys will get your hands on you. You're getting chucked by linebackers as you come across the middle. Like, there's a physicality to playing in the slot, which is why a lot of teams have gone to more of these power slot, bigger body types, and they have that in Luke McCaffrey, who obviously is still a long-term development project to really, really be a star at that position if he ever gets there. But there's a reason why they've got him here, and that's kind of the position that I think they ultimately want him to land in. But Jahan's quickness should help, giving him the ability to route guys up on choice routes and things. Like, there's definitely a role for Jahan Dotson in the slot. As for the position overall, Dan Quinn today on the wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3 battle.
Yeah, so I know you guys were talking about that. We really do have some unique guys and some guys that are absolutely going for it. So what you were calling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all of these players, will go in and have a role into it. It's been cool to see Luke following Olamide some. Preparation and processing and what does practice look like. And so to see Luke make some plays in the game, I was certainly happy with that. In the slot, you saw the one going down the seam. He's back there trying to return punts. Like, he's a relentless competitor, and it's one of the things I really admire about him. He's just always down for it. Yeah, you want me to return kick? I'll be the wing. I was like, no, you can't do them both. It's the same thing on punt return. You don't get to do both of those, So his just relentless ability to go after it, Ben, I think is going to make the player ascend as we're going. Diami and Jahan have, shown, some cool stuff for us. You feel Jahan's speed. I feel Diami get on top of people. So we got a number of people, but I don't necessarily, I'm not going to be boxed in and say, this is one, this is only this is only this. I was referring to, how do we utilize the players? Not everybody will have the same exact role. We got to try to find them and put them into the spaces of things they do well. By and large, what are you looking for at receivers of, contested catches, beating man-to-man? Those are things that you have to be able to do. And then the yards after the catch and the playmaking ability, those are things that you're looking for all the time. At the core, the urgency, the finish, those are the things that I'm looking for on a regular.
What you hope out of a coordinator when they call a play is they have a vision for it. And so I would imagine there's going to be times that right before Cliff gets on the quarterback's headset to call a play, he's going to get on the offensive staff, because there's a radio that all the offensive staff, you see the guys wearing headsets on the sideline. So, Cliff can talk to Bobby Ingram and he can talk to Bobby Johnson, the O-line coach. And so he'll get on the horn and, hey, we need 11 personnel here. Make sure Jahan's in at the slot. Hey, we're in 11 personnel here. Make sure that Luke's in at slot. We're at 12 personnel, or we're at 10 personnel. We're at whatever it is. Make sure Alameda is here. Terry is here. Make sure Terry's at the Z. Make sure Terry's at the X, because they might want a certain matchup. When they envision the play, they're calling it because they are anticipating a certain coverage, and that certain coverage would lead to a matchup here that is best exploited by this player. And that stuff's really hard to communicate a ton of. Most of the time it's hey, these guys are in, let's just call a play. But especially situationally, you get into a third down and you like your matchup, and you've prepared this stuff during the week. You've previewed it in between series. These coaches have plays that they'll go, hey, we're probably going to do this, this, and this. Let's make sure this guy's in. Let's make sure he's ready. Because what you don't want is to get to a third down where Jahan, you want him out there and he's played the first 2 downs and you just ran him on a go route and now he's tired. That doesn't make any sense. So you have to make sure that you're in sync with your receivers coach and your quality control guys and whoever else is involved in the process there to make sure that you have the players available. It used to drive me nuts when Jay was here that they'd have a big third down late in the game and Jordan Reed would be on the sideline. And you're like, I know you tried to get a first down and you didn't know for 100% certain you were going to be in third down, but can we not have Jordan Reed on the sideline for your big third down when your entire offense is designed to get Jordan Reed matchups in key situations? That's a problem, bro. So those are the kinds of things that you have to get detailed up. And I do think, to kind of, Anthony, bring it all back together, they don't see it as a straight wide receiver one. That one they do. It's Terry. But they see it as X, Z, F, Y, whatever their nomenclature is. And based off of what the play's demands are and what roles and skill sets they need, they're going to rotate those guys. And a depth chart will develop from that, because naturally some guys are going to play more or less. But it would not surprise me if one week Jahan plays 70% of the snaps and the next week he plays 50, because they like the matchup one week versus another. It's not going to be just these are our guys, go out there, because there's not enough separation in the talents and the skill sets the way they see it right now to overcome whatever advantages they can design based off skill sets and matchups.
Yeah, and I think that also just goes hand in hand with the competition thing that they've been preaching all the time. If you want to go out there and play, go out there, make some plays, be very intentional about the reps that you get, and then go from there.
Yep, for sure. All right, speaking of competition.
Number 2.
Next couple of guys all in the defensive backfield. My number one guy to watch was Emmanuel Forbes. And it was basically, hey, please don't give up any explosive plays. It'd be really nice if we could do that because it's been a problem. And sure enough, Emmanuel Forbes did not give up any explosive plays. He didn't actually play that much. To me, he's clearly cornerback number 1 right now. He played in this game 14 snaps. Didn't have any major stuff happen, which is good. He showed a little physicality in the run game. I was saying this morning, Anthony, with Logan, and we were talking about it with Phillips earlier. He finally looks bigger on TV. I know that sounds so, I don't know, whatever it sounds like. But he finally, he's still obviously skinny relative to other NFL players, but like he doesn't look nearly as little in pads as he used to. Like he's been putting in work. Good for him. He's not afraid to stick his nose in there. That's got to continue. He's got to make plays. He can't give up big plays, week in, week out once we get into the regular season, and he's playing more than 14 snaps. But, like, for this week, all we got is all we got, and what we got from Emmanuel Forbes is good.
Yeah, I think going back to him looking big on the screen.
Bigger.
Bigger a little bit. I think that's just a testament to, his coaches, believing in him trusting in them and, abiding by what they're telling him. To me, he seems like, he's buying in. And the fact that, he didn't give up any explosive plays also suggests, he might be adhering to like what the coaching staff is telling.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to give up some. That's life as a corner in the NFL. I mean, the touchdown on BSJ, like, it's not ideal coverage, but it's not bad coverage either. It's not optimal, clearly. There's no such thing as optimal coverage where you get scored on. But these guys are getting used to this coaching staff, and they're getting more reps and more exposure. And we didn't hear about anything crazy from the Dolphins on Friday either. And sometimes it's just like I know there was at least one play where like Tua missed. Sometimes that happens. But hopefully Forbes can continue to get better and grow.
Number 3.
Continuing on in the defensive backfield, Tyler Owens was Toby's next pick. Great call by Toby, because I think that we are getting into a bit of a conundrum at the safety position, Anthony.
Man.
Derek Forrest missed tackle in his debut back. Like, it's kind of unfortunate for Defoe. That happens, I think, when you haven't tackled for real in a while, and he missed the first preseason game. But you got him. Like, Revo missed a couple of tackles, also had a couple of monster hits. But they got 7 safeties in 6 spots, and 6 is still more than you typically keep. I don't know what they're going to do at this position. Dominique Hampton continuing to play linebacker helps, I guess. But, man, I don't know how Tyler Owens doesn't make the team. Like, he's been one of the best 53 in camp. And when you preach competition, sorry to other dudes, but he's made plays. He has a touchdown-saving tackle on the big run that they gave up. He makes another play on special teams where he blows up the blocker into the ball carrier and sends him head over heels. Like, he's big. He's fast. He's been around the ball. It sounds like a dude who's going to make the team to me.
I think he definitely makes the team. Again, like, everything that he's doing, he's flashing. Like, he's flying to the ball. He's coming up, being a short tackler, tackling people for loss. And then also on the special team side of things, he's one of the first people down there blowing the blocker up. So I think it is tough. It would be hard to, move off a guy like Jeremy Reeves just because he was a Pro Bowler last year. I think that's
all pro 2 years ago, not just Pro Bowl. Like, that's the real one. All pro 2 years ago.
So man, they got some tough decisions to make. Derek Forrest, you did mention him. I think he's battling it out with him, to be honest. It's tough, though. It's tough.
Defoe played pretty well a couple years ago when he was a starter.
Yeah.
Starter. And was okay last year before getting hurt. That's a position where they're just going to stare at the board and be like, are we really cutting this guy? Are we really, if you're Owens, you just try to get into practice squad and see if someone else gets hurt and call him up? Like, I don't know. Hampton, I'm very curious when I go through the numbers this week, and we do we're going to do it on Take Command. It'll be out Thursday morning when we go through the actual roster numbers. And is there now, if you count Hampton as a linebacker and Jamin as a defensive end, can you somehow justify? And one of the things that we talked about on Friday when Toby and I were talking about this before Owens had another great game.
Number 4.
Is like, where does Mike Sanders still help you here? Because he, again, makes a couple of big plays. He just knows how to get his nose in there. He's always around the ball. And his ability to play inside and potentially help be a backup outside. Like, do you go short at corner knowing that Quan can kind of cover you in the nickel, that, Mikey Sanders still can cover you inside, outside? Is that how you wind up getting your defensive back room filled, is multiple guys? And I was curious to see if Sanders still would line up outside at all in this game. I don't think that he did. He only played 14 snaps, and I believe all of them were in the slot. But it is something I'm kind of watching. I don't think we'll be able to get out to camp this week because they're practicing in the afternoons, and we have to do the show. But I'm gonna text some folks and be like, hey, keep your eye on 2. How often is he lining up outside? Because that's a mental. As I put together my little roster here on the radio, that's something that I want to know because it might solve some of Dan Quinn's problems. These are ultimately good problems to have, and Dan Quinn today talked about the defensive backfield as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say outside and inside differently, for who are the nickels. Yep. So just for the outside piece, we've mixed and matched different guys into different spots. I was certainly impressed with Castro Fields in the game. I thought on the deep ball to go, made some plays onto that. I thought Chig really made a difference in the way that he competed and played. So, and then we've really kind of been working the 3-part of Ben and Emmanuel and Mike in the different spots. I thought Emmanuel showed his best week from practice down at Miami and into the game. So I thought, I love when I see this on the way up. We're still into the middle of that of what the best combinations look like, but I was definitely pleased to see Emmanuel on the way up. And I thought Ben had showed a lot of consistency through camp, through the preseason game, leading into Miami. So certainly the touchdown pass on 4th and 1, he'd like to have that one back from a technical standpoint, like at the line. But I'll get there, and we're still working through who. But I love how they're competing. I love how they're going for it, and I love how they're supporting one another, which when you're in a competition with someone it's not always the easiest thing to do. But with this group, they do. And so, that shows me that, that's a cool thing because they're in it for one another too.
I love that. And they're not, the good news is it's not easy. That's the bad news as well because it's not easy. But the good news is it's not like, oh, this guy's not competing. That guy's not trying hard. This guy sucks. Just cut him. You don't have to worry about that. No, there's guys that are making plays. And again, he mentions Tariq Castro Fields. I had him down in my notes as a guy who had a good night. And a guy that's been proven for them on special teams in the past, a guy who's played some football for them on the inside and the outside. Not a great NFL corner by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy who's got a little bit of experience. And as you try to round out the room and you're trying to make these tough decisions, guys that can do a lot of different stuff are really valuable. So that's another name for sure to keep an eye on. Chigozie Anuzium, the other guy he mentioned there when he said Chig, the undrafted rookie, who's probably more of a practice squad guy, but certainly could play some ball for them this year and in the future as maybe even a regular with the size and speed and kind of physical traits and attributes that he has.
Number 5.
Number 5, Toby picked Ben Sinnott. I have a note that I'm going to slightly edit for radio, Anthony. Sinnott is a big human.
Yes, he is.
I'll show you the actual thing I wrote down later.
Oh, wow.
That's a big man who's hard to bring down, and he's going to be a really good player for them immediately. And hopefully he evolves into a great player for them. The Kittle use check stuff is real. But for right now, big man, catch football, hard to tackle. Worst things you can have at a tight end.
Yeah.
Hashtag analysis, baby.
Yes.
Come on.
Number 6.
There we go, big voice man. I tried to get cute, Anthony, with my last one. I picked Andre Jones / Javonte John Baptiste in an effort to not just pick Jamin Davis, who's the obvious. It's really hey, we're watching those ends.
Yeah.
And, JJB had a sack and recovered the fumble that Jamin Davis forced. Jones, not a whole lot, Andre Jones. But you got to love what you saw from the 7th-round rookie as well as Jamin. And it feels like those two, along with KJ Henry, are kind of in the fight for those last defensive end spots. I'm very curious, again, how the roster is going to play out here. At this point, I think Jamin's the guy who's going to emerge there. But John Baptiste was asked about today in the press conference, and Dan Quinn had this
I thought
to say.
it was probably the best version of him, Candy, so far. And I saw him be relentless on that particular sack. The first play started, the quarterback then drifted outside the pocket to begin to scramble, and Javonte had to go and chase him and finish. And I think as a defensive lineman, so many of the plays are made in that way. You don't just, beat the offensive tackle once and you get the clean sack. That happens some, but there's plenty that a stunt happens or a blitz happens and the quarterback gets outside the pocket and you go finish on them. And so that's something you've heard me say a lot, the ability and the demonstration of going to finish. And so to see him do that on that play, I thought that was really cool. And so there were a couple of moments like that. I hope you guys saw the excitement and enthusiasm on the sideline, for some of the guys making plays. And I thought, what a great example and demonstration of brotherhood by some of these guys. I pointed out one earlier that Tyler Owens had made a big play on the sideline, and John Allen was the one running down the field to try to connect with him as he came off the field. So moments like that of guys supporting one another is what you'd hope to see, as a coach, and to see that happening on the field, I was really pleased for that.
So there you go. That's the current status. That dude hustles, but so does Jamin, and so does KJ Henry. Like these guys all play the right way, which is great. It just makes the decision that much harder for Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, and they ultimately narrow this thing down to 53. That's our pick 6. We'll do it again going into the final preseason game. We should at that point really have a great feel on maybe the 6 or 7 guys that are fighting for roster spots. It feels like there might actually be more. So we will discuss all that Friday at 6 p.m. You also get the biggest headlines of the day every day that there is a press conference. So Dan Quinn will talk Wednesday at Thursday as well. They have a game week scheduled this week to the Commanders. They're practicing at 1 o'clock and then earlier mid-morning on Friday. So we'll have all the reaction here on the Hoffman Show. And, of course, you hear many of those press conferences live. I guess the end of the Sheehan Show because they're before the 1 o'clock practice here on the Team 980. When we get back to the top story of the day and more from Dan Quinn as well as from Jayden Daniels. Quinn names Daniels the starter for 2024. Their reactions and how DQ arrived at that decision beyond the obvious. He's the best guy for the job. Next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Final half hour, we return to our top story of the day. Dateline Ashburn, where today Dan Quinn decided he was going to shake up everybody's talking points, shake up all of the things that we were going to talk about by naming Jayden Daniels his starting quarterback.
He went through the whole thing. He didn't miss a beat, hit the targets that, we had put in front of him. We talked about the practices against the other teams, the games, so he's ready and he's earned the right to do that. He's really put in the work while being surrounded by some excellent teammates here, and in that case, I wanted to make sure I singled one of them out. In a perfect scenario, a young QB would have a leader to also learn from, but perfect rarely happens. But we do have that in Marcus Mariota, and him sharing 9 years of gold with Jayden, I think, has been something that's really cool for us to see. Rookie QBs usually don't get that, and we do. And when QB rooms are special, that energy can be felt throughout an entire team, and we have that. So really cool to say. So apologies for having you come up with new storylines for today, but Jayden Daniels is our starting quarterback.
No problems at all, Dan. Really not that surprised. In fact, Jayden Daniels eventually stepped to the podium, was asked, because it felt so inevitable, which I do want to touch on, because inevitable doesn't mean predetermined. This was a competition. Marcus Mariota got a lot of first-team reps. Jayden Daniels also got a lot of first-team reps. Jayden's went a lot better, thus he is the starting quarterback, but it was a competition. And it was also a competition between Jayden and himself to make sure that they thought he was ready to take the job, grow with it, and not stack any kind of bad habits, which we've seen from all kinds of quarterback prospects that have gone sideways and ultimately not reached their potential over the years. But we've, I think, all known for a couple of weeks that this was inevitably coming. At least that's how we felt from the outside. So when Jayden Daniels was told of the news, was he surprised at all, even though this felt inevitable to the rest of us?
If I didn't pretend, like I said, nothing's given in this world. So Marcus is a great vet for me, and for not even for me, but for Sam Hartman also. Man, he looks out for us. Everybody in that room looks out for each other. So, when they told me, I was really surprised. I didn't know what I was getting talked to about. I thought he was going to talk to me about my routine from this past game again. So it was a surprise to me.
That's awesome. And I think it's part of why he gets this job and why he's succeeded and why he's successful, period, is there is a humility to Jayden Daniels that might seem aw shucks, that might seem almost ludicrous and absurd from the outside, but is how you stay humble and how you attack each day with a white belt mentality. Just to be like, hey, let's see what I can learn today. If you think you know it all, or you think you've made it, or you think you've earned something already, you're not as incentivized to work as hard. And I think even if you gave Jayden the job, he would work just as hard because he's not trying to be a starter in this league. He's trying to be great in this league. And that is a constant pursuit. And I think Jayden understands that. But that kind of, blinders on, straight ahead, I'm just focused on the day. I'm focused on the next task that they give me. I'm here to be coached. I'm wide-eyed, just ready to be told what to do next. That's part of the reason why he actually is successful. As for why now, what did Dan Quinn learn over the last week in this joint practice and then ultimately the second preseason game that made it so he was ready to name JD5 QB1?
I think the practice before we left to go down to Miami was the best one I had seen from him on the Tuesday prior to us leaving that Wednesday. The command of it, the accuracy, the details of it, that was one of the best practices I'd seen him have, was the best practice I'd seen him have. And so I think that was more in line with, who he is, what he does, the checks, the calls, the communication, the delivery of the ball. He was just really on point. So it was just cool to see all of that, come to life.
I mean, I think the more we've watched him, it's been surprising because there hasn't been a tremendously bad day. Like, he's had days that are better than others, but the fact that he just keeps doing it. And that's the thing, right? It's one thing for a guy to be good at a short amount of time, but I think part of the reason that you wait this long to do it is you need to see him stack days, and he can't stack days till you have the days to stack. And that ability to just keep stacking good days and to do it against good defenses or different defenses once you get into these joint practices. Some solid players, obviously, on this Commander secondary. Dan Quinn knows what this defense is, and he's seen Jayden attack it ruthlessly every single day. I think he's loved that. Is there anything that's been surprising to Dan Quinn about Jayden Daniels?
It didn't surprise me. We knew we would.
And again, that is a huge part. And one thing that Dan Quinn, I'm not going to play this bite, but I thought it was interesting listening to Quinn and listening to Daniels talk about it. Daniels is a natural leader, and we've heard in the building that he is already a leader in a lot of ways, the way he brings the team together. It's just natural to who he is as a person. But they've actually not tasked him with being a leader. And Daniels talked about how Mariota is often a guy that will step up and say something, or he has shown Jayden how to do certain things as a quarterback when you have to lead because you're the man in the huddle that they're all looking at. And I think that lack of pressure to not be like, hey, man, we drafted you number 1 overall or number 2 overall with our first round pick. We're requiring you to be the starter, to be a leader. Like, they're not forcing any of that. Which is not to say that in certain situations that might not be something you want to do. The Chicago Bears are putting that on Caleb Williams, and they're taking great care to make sure that he's prepared for those moments. But if I could pick a path for a young quarterback, I would pick the path that Washington has picked for Daniels. I would pick having a vet in the room, someone that you can beat out and instill confidence in yourself that, hey, if I'm better than this guy, like I know I'm an NFL quarterback. And to have that guy be a great mentor for the young quarterback. And Dan talked about how special that quarterback room is. And I think the fact, even something else that seems small but is indicative of a larger cohesiveness of that room and how together they all are, is Jayden always brings up Sam Hartman. Like, it is something that is small, but Jayden is not like, I'm number 2 pick, he's undrafted free agent. He's like, we're rookies in this together. It speaks to the character of who he is, and it speaks extremely well of it. As for how this all went down, how did Dan Quinn make the announcement that Jayden Daniels would be the starter? Here's the head coach.
I went to the quarterback room and just spent some time, and we had talked first about the process going from Jet Week into Miami Week, even as much as like warming up and what did that look like. So I asked him to make some changes or assess what he liked and what needed to do different. I said that's what preseason games are for, to find out whether we're playing at 1 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 4 o'clock. This happens 2 hours before the game. This is 1:45, and so we went through that process together. And then I just said, man, I'm naming you the starter today. And the name of our whole program will be about competition. And you've absolutely crushed it and earned it. And so it's time to do that. And so I wanted just to let him know that that's always what we're going to stand for. And so it was a cool moment, but one that he had absolutely earned.
No doubt about it. And as for earning it versus being anointed, in the same way that, again, it's not wrong what Chicago did with Caleb Williams. It's just different. But for Daniels was having to earn it, something that he sees value in versus being named QB1 the day after he was draft pick number 2. Daniels, with a final thought from today.
100%. For me, it's like what DQ and them said early on, man, they got a plan. And, they didn't want to go out there and, hey, you're the starter. I didn't come here. I haven't earned anything. What I did in college was great. Now it's time for a new slate, clean slate. So coming in, I got to prove not only to myself, not only to the coaches, but to my teammates, earn the respect of those guys, because some of those guys were drafted in the same position as me. They had to work for everything they had. For me to come in there, and if DQ and them were gonna preach competition, and you got to earn everything, man. They can't come in and just give me the job right away, so I had to go earn it.
It all comes down to what you're building your program on. And I think in Chicago, again, to draw the comparison, they're like, we are maximizing Caleb Williams. We are building around Caleb Williams. Everything is Caleb Williams centric. And Caleb, your job in this is to be great. We think you have greatness in you. We're going to give you every opportunity, from receivers like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen to offensive line, to a defense that can support you, to slip and slides, to whatever. Like, they made it clear when they drafted him 1-1 overall, which is, I think, different as well than even being 1-2 overall, that it was about Caleb and maximizing him and like, hey, everybody else in this building, we got something really special here. We have an opportunity unlike anything arguably in the history of our 100-plus-year-old franchise. Let's be aggressive in making that work. And I think if that's the way you sell it, that's fine. You just got to get everyone on the same page. And I think Caleb's, from everything we know, has done a great job of selling himself to his teammates that, yeah, I am the centerpiece here, but I'm also a part of this. And I'm going to do my part. Where here, the mantra, the everything was competition, competition, competition. We all know Jayden is the most important piece, but it's competition, 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 and you have to be true to yourself. And the Commanders have been. They had a competition. It was legit. The only thing, just because it was a legit competition doesn't mean that the outcome wasn't a blowout, so to speak, that it wasn't, a 30-point win on the scoreboard. Jayden long ago got to a point where he was clearly going to be the victor here. But you can't take the test you can't pass the tests till you take them. Ultimately, he passed them all, and Jayden Daniels is the starting quarterback for the 2024 Washington Commanders. And hopefully, far beyond, this is the 8th straight year that Washington will have a different starting quarterback. Here's hoping that streak ends right there. When we get back, we wrap up the show here on the Team at 980. Wrapping up here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Heck of a show today, Ant. Kind of flew by.
Yeah, they did. 3 hours, real quick. You know, we had a lot of news to address.
Really, it wasn't a lot of news. It was one big news item.
What?
Just felt like a lot of news.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, we'll talk about it with the people.
Yes, sir. Can't wait.
Pretty pumped for
Vibe check Tuesday, man.
It is back. It is back tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Take your calls on Jayden Daniels being named the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders for 2024. I try to zoom out too, I think, and kind of take a larger pick, like going back to try to think about where we were when he was drafted, and like the idea that this is where we are right now. So we'll try to get some perspective and some context. We'll talk to some folks. We'll do the whole deal as folks expect from us tomorrow. Also, the rest of the sporting weekend in review. Anything else on the docket for tomorrow that we already know about?
Weekend in review, vibe check. Oh, there's practice tomorrow. No, there's practice Wednesday.
Yeah, they're off tomorrow.
Wednesday.
So this is like a game week for them. So
Yeah.
it's a 1 o'clock practice Wednesday, 1 o'clock Thursday. No fans, no nothing. Like training camps are basically over. Technically, those practices are open to the media, but we have to do a show in the afternoon. So getting out there is going to be a little difficult for your boys.
Yeah.
Alas, here we are. All right, we'll tie up all the loose ends from the game too, if there's any remaining. Maybe a little Take Command. We do have a fresh episode out now. If you don't want to wait on Take Command.
TC, yep.
So yeah, that's where we're at. Anthony, what was your favorite part of the show today?
Favorite part of the show?
Yeah.
I would probably have to go. I don't know. I like the second part of 1st and 10. I wasn't here for a majority of the first part because someone took my headphones, so I had to.
Walker.
It actually was not him.
Oh, who was it?
I still don't know who it was.
Where were they?
They were in the studio all the way over there. The side studio all the way in the back, like near the kitchen.
You sure you didn't leave them over there?
Craig, I was here on Wednesday. I leave my headphones up here. Nobody else leaves anything up there except me.
Here's what we need to do. I have a locker.
Yes.
Where your headphones are going in my locker.
Okay.
It's right next to where you prep for the show.
You're right.
Starting today, there. So whoever's stealing Anthony's headphones, don't go doing that.
Yeah.
Get your own. You're a radio professional.
I'll never
We
understand
pay you
it.
here. Use some of that money to buy what you need to do your job.
Yeah.
Or steal anything out of the graveyard of headphones pile that are in here. This one even has a microphone that won't do you any good on it. It's a headset, like you're in a call service center.
You want to know what's crazy, Craig? My little sister uses those headphones, like with the mic, as her actual headphones. I'll never understand it.
Just like to walk around?
Yeah, and I offered to buy her some AirPods, and she was like, "Nope." I said, "Yeah." I would.
How old is your sister?
She's going to FAMU. She's 18.
So is this like a kid? This is what the kids are doing now? They want to look like they're in a customer service center? Or is it just hers? This is a stylistic choice.
So she's done it before, and also a guy that I think he's probably like 21 or 22. He's also done it, and I don't truly understand it.
You know what I saw this weekend that I thought was awesome in the headphone department? I was out running on one of the trails, and I saw like a 70-year-old woman running, and she had like the old school like Walkman style headphones.
Oh my god!
And I was like, "You are a character in a movie. This is awesome."
Oh my gosh!
Did
she have the CD player with her too?
No, I do think she was like plugged into a phone of some kind.
That's fair.
But
she's caught up with the times to an extent.
Yeah. I was the person that I hate today. We're gonna run out of time for real things, unfortunately. Did we already?
Nah, we got about a minute and 35 seconds now. A minute and 35.
Okay, I think I know what time the show's supposed to end.
Yes.
But I'd rather tell the story anyway. So like one thing I don't really understand is people that run with their phone in their hands. Like if you're a runner and you run and the phone's in your hand, like there's so many pieces of clothing / available accessories that you don't have to hold your phone while you run. I guess there might be some people that do it for whatever specific reasons. Fine, if you think it's like a safety thing and you're like want the ability to hit the emergency button, okay, like I'll hear that. But if you're just holding it because you didn't think ahead, or you didn't buy clothes that whatever, like I don't really get that. There's just so many options of good running clothing. But today I was running in a pair of shorts that didn't have like a dedicated phone pocket, but had pockets, and I had my phone fall out. I forgot these shorts kind of suck for that purpose, and I didn't bring another thing to make up for it. And so my phone fell out of my shorts pocket twice, and then I was just like, I'm going to be the person I hate, and now I'm running with my phone.
Yeah, I hate that for you.
The one thing I think is extra wacky, though, is when people do it with wired headphones. I'm like, are you not just like yanking on your head with every time you pump your arms?
I don't like that at all.
It's weird. Anyway, that's our very thoughtful, sporty radio show. We'll be back tomorrow. BetMGM Tonight is next.